Hi, everybody. Welcome to Women in Wealth. We're excited to have you today. If you're familiar with Juan, you know we kind of wait till about 3 minutes after to really get started so people can get in and get settled. If you want to put your name in the chat and where you're from, if you have any questions you want us to try and get to before the end of class, you're welcome to throw them in there. You're going to hear me on repeat, so don't worry. I'm just going to be quiet for 1 second and answer this. Okay. I'm Ashley Northcutt, President and CEO of National Women's Affordable Housing Network. So if I haven't met you, welcome and thanks for joining us for this presentation. Raise your hand if you're part of WAN, if you're a member of WAN. If so, you've probably heard, but we have our third annual. Yeah, I see the hand. Hey, Cindy Prater, I didn't see you here. I just saw you. That's our last year's Wonderful Woman of the Year. Um, We have a summit coming up in May that is almost sold out, and it will be our third annual and third sellout crowd, close to 500 this year. So, very excited about that. That's a great opportunity in the affordable housing industry to network, to learn, to connect, and we're really excited to have everybody. Um, we have other things going on in addition to this Women in Wealth. I have it on my other screen, so sorry if I look crazy where I'm looking. But just to give you guys some other upcoming events, we have an AI series coming up. The first series was very exciting. It's taught by someone that makes, to me, AI not feel so scary. More that, hey, we can do this and you're not behind. We're all trying to catch on to what's changing every single day. So check that out if you want to just continue to build on what you know in AI and your comfort level. Um, we will also have the Novogradic is giving all of our members 50 or sorry, 25% off of an upcoming series called Low Income Housing Tax Credit Allocating and Underwriting Basics. If you're a student, it's 50% off. So non-students 25% and students 50%. And then you've probably seen right now we're celebrating 50 women over the age of 50 at Women's Affordable Housing Network, and we're thrilled to do that to shout out some people that may have not been celebrated around their career or maybe in retirement, but we're just thankful for the road they paved for everyone in affordable housing to keep making a difference. So check that out on LinkedIn, and if you're not a member, join us. Thanks for putting these comments in that you guys are coming from everywhere. Um, and yes, our girl from Alabama, Cindy, is saying, "Hey, y'all." So, Wendy, is your hand, you're a member of one. Okay. I didn't know if you had a question. Anybody have any great news they want to share today before we get started?
I was just saying I was over 50.
Yay! That we we
I
tell
turn
everyone to.
54 tomorrow. God, I'm
Oh my
really over
gosh,
50.
happy birthday! And like we've been saying, our women over 50 don't live 50, y'all. We had to be so careful when we were like picking because we're like, we're not sure
Who
because
is
y'all
over
are looking
50?
good,
Exactly.
girls. Yeah, got to be careful not aging someone. Well, happy birthday tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah, the battle scars are underneath the sweater.
Jill Cromartie, who was a integral part of starting Women's Affordable Housing Network in Atlanta as well, is her birthday's today and she just turned 50. So that's exciting.
Nice.
Just
Oh.
turned 40. Everyone's telling on themselves now. All right. We'll put you on for 10 years from now, Tori. You're already doing amazing things. Well, I'll just shout out one more time. We are so thrilled to have Emily. She's going to be coming up on the screen in a minute. Andre, I don't know if you can pin Wendy, myself, yourself, and Emily up on the top of the screen. Um, there we
It
go.
said the
Okay.
host removed her. Now I'm spotlighted. I don't need to be spotlighted.
Okay. Emily got removed.
Yeah.
Okay, so will you tell her to rejoin Wendy and we'll
Yeah.
figure that out? And Andrea, can you just watch for Emily coming back in? So y'all, we're really excited because Women in Wealth not only is a short-term exciting thing to learn about to make sure you're making, the best financial decisions for yourself, but what we're also learning a whole lot about in the philanthropy space right now is there's a huge transfer of wealth to women. And what happens with women, the way they give philanthropically, that's a big word, is very different than men. And so it is a part of your happiness, which I think is part will be covered in this presentation. But later in life, or even now, when you have the choice of where you want to give to make a difference, classes like this are very helpful to just figure out how do you get stable, remain stable, and then have money to give back to the causes that you care about. So, really excited to have this presentation. And Babby, you drive safe. You're probably in a Buick. If you guys don't know Babby's Buick story, listen to the Wandcast with Babby. She just put in the chat. And with that, we're thrilled to welcome Emily. I don't see her back in yet, but she was in here, so we'll get her back in. Any questions about Juan while we wait?
Yeah, we're having technical difficulties.
Okay.
She said she's trying to rejoin, but it's saying she's unable to.
Okay. So I know Andrea's working on it behind the scenes too.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Okay. Um, so Juan in San Diego, I'll talk about Summit a little bit if you guys want to hear about it. San Diego is going to be a lot of fun. Sunday, we're having property tours, wellness, community service. We have a yoga and sound bath in the afternoon. Then we have mentor dinners for anyone that signed up, or you can just go with your friends. And then that night, we're doing s'mores around the campfire. So just a very low key, come hang out if you can. Monday really kicks off the summit. Of course, we have our exercise in the morning. Hey, Celia. Celia's coming. Here comes everybody coming to Summit. Go ahead. I want to see these comments. Monday will be the real summit when it starts off like the typical, when I say real, the typical conference sessions. Tons of learning, amazing speakers. If you have not seen the lineup, we're so excited about the caliber of topics that you all nominated and the caliber of speakers that you all nominated. So thank you so much on that. Wednesday, we have some leadership meetings, but there's also a paid AI training that morning from 8 to 11 for anyone interested in getting some, in-person AI training. So hope to see you there. It's going to be a ton of fun. There's a lot going on. We have an exciting announcement coming up. We also added a Juan Wisdom session that will have some, we call them affordable housing famous people. So some of our affordable housing famous people will be sharing their journey over their last couple years. Oh, poor Cindy's not coming to Summit. We're gonna miss you, Cindy. I feel like we need a cardboard cutout. Um, so yes, very exciting. If you're not coming yet, check it out. We are very close to sell out. So I can't give you a date, but we are seeing influx of people and I'm thrilled with that, but don't want anyone left out. So if you're excited to come, hop on there and sign up. Wendy, any update from Emily?
I'm trying to get her in, sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, this is funny. We got on like what, 15 minutes early to make sure everything would be fine. And of course, technology. So enjoy your lunch. Anybody have any good news to share? I know we had some more people join. I can share that Women's Affordable Housing Network was invited to speak on a panel at the Giving List, which is very exciting because the Giving List is a curated list of women-led nonprofits connecting with billionaires that are interested in giving to grassroots nonprofit mission work that they're interested in. So we're really excited. We're coming to that conference next month not from a women's affordable housing standpoint per se, but from an affordable housing to draw more attention to the reason this is so incredibly important for our entire country. So thrilled with that. Um, that's probably the best news we have. What's up, Wendy? I see you.
I see you. Emily hopped on her laptop and she thinks she's tricked the system into letting her back in. So,
Yay. Okay, is
yes,
she on yet?
yes. I got the message on my text,
Here,
so
let's see. Andrea, do you see
Yeah,
Emily?
she's coming in.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I
don't
see
know
her
what
now.
happened.
And she won't say this, but she was just at her broker-dealer's event, and can we say that? We were just sort of filling the air. Well, Ashley was doing a great job of it, but
I'm good at that.
the recognition that you just
Totally.
got in Madrid, is that?
Yeah. So we have different broker dealers, just like different companies you work for, and we just went on a trip to Madrid, and I'm number 2 at the firm, which I think is a testament to, the service we provide our clients and the team's work behind the scenes. So it's an exciting moment for myself and the team here.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, you just came right in, like nothing happened. So you're
We had
amazing.
to
And
trick
at
the system, right? It's okay.
yes, at Juan, we are used to all kinds of tech issues and different things, and that's why we love Andrea so much. So
Yeah.
welcome back. We've just been talking about
Thank
what's
you.
going on at Juan. Congratulations on that amazing award and international, it sounds like. So very cool. And with that, I'll just turn it over to you. If you could just introduce yourself to everyone, and then we're thrilled to hear what you're going to teach us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So let me pull up my screen just one moment. I know we all have to like pivot, right? Let me see. Bear with me just one moment as I grab this. Okay. So you all now should be seeing a PowerPoint presentation. So good afternoon, and thanks all for jumping on here today. My name is Emily Promise, and I'm the CEO of ShorePoint Advisory Group and a certified financial planner. We're an independent financial planning firm, so we work with individuals and families across the country to help them use their wealth efficiently and to plan for what matters most in their life. We are predominantly female team, which is pretty unique in this industry, such as you all. So a lot of our clients are female, and we're really helping them feel empowered and in control around their financial picture. So today, I know a lot of people, maybe numbers aren't your favorite to talk about, but I hope that today will teach you a little bit about how to make sure you're using your pay most effectively and plan for the future. So today we'll talk through 4 key areas. One is gaining clarity into your current financial picture. We can't plan for the future until we know what your current financial stance looks like. Second is we'll talk about the power of building wealth. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy freedom in the future. So we'll talk through what that looks like. Third is why planning is key. You can do last minute, stoplight, red light planning, but it's best to proactively plan. And then fourth, we'll talk about how you actually put those 3 pieces together and craft a plan on your own. So the first is gaining clarity into your finances. So a roadmap to gaining clarity into your financial picture. This may seem simple for a lot of you, but the first on here is employee benefits. How many of you, you got your first job, you went in and they gave you a big employee benefit packet and you said, well, just tell me what I'm going to get paid, right? Who really skims through all the pages in the employee benefit packet? Usually not a lot of people. But oftentimes, inside those employee benefit packets, there's a lot of good benefits that are worth real money, and you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of them. For example, we've had clients that have had deferred compensation plans or various different forms of incentive comp that they're not even taking advantage of, and they're leaving money on the table, not because they don't want to, but just because they're so busy in their career that they haven't really had the time to fully look through the opportunity set that their employer is offering them. So I always say the first thing you should do is make sure that you have a full and clear understanding of exactly what benefits your employer offers you. The second is understanding your paycheck. Again, we all get paid a salary, but what does that actually mean, bottom line, dollars in our pocket? So we'll talk about that in a slide from now. The third part of gaining clarity into your financial picture is understanding from an investing standpoint what you're doing. And investing can mean a variety of things. It can mean stocks and bonds, it can mean putting money in a high yield savings account to save for a home or pay off debts. It can mean real estate. There are a lot of different forms of investing. So you want to have a clear picture of how you're currently investing and if that suits you best for your long-term goals. And then the fourth part of getting clarity into your financial picture is the things that go outside of the numbers. So it's getting clarity around what your goals are in the short term and the long term. It's making sure that you have your estate documents in place, making sure that you have a good tax strategy. So it's taking a holistic view of your entire financial picture to make sure everything's in line, not just bits and pieces. So we'll talk through these areas a little bit further. So everyone's favorite, the paycheck, right? So again, part of gaining clarity into your finances, you can't really plan for the future if you don't know the actual dollar amount that you have to plan with. So this is just a sample here, just to pick out an easy number to play around with. So say you get hired, you get a promotion, and your pay is now $250,000. We all know that's not actually what ends up in our pocket at the end of the year. I just had a client the other day. They said, they were doing their taxes and they're like, I really can't make $300,000. I don't know where it goes. Well, that's because there are some line items that come off the top of that pay, whether you like it or not. The biggest one is taxes. So this is just a sample. The numbers are just for illustrative purposes. But say your employer tells you that you're going to be making a $250,000 a year salary. Out of that, typically around $75,000, depending on what state you live in, are going to come right off the top for taxes. So you're not going to even see that money. So off the bat, you're already down to 175. And then 401k savings. Maybe you all aren't maxing out your 401k, but if you're under the age of 50, you can put in up to $23,500 into your 401k. We'll talk about that further, whether that's the right option for you, but that should come right off the top of your annual income. And then we all know that there are insurance premiums that come out, whether your company offers like a disability or a term policy, those premiums will come right out of your pay. And then other benefits, whether it's health insurance, dental, vision. Some companies have perks, whether it's for, the local transit system or the coffee shop in the building. All those expenses come directly out of your pay before that take-home check ever hits your checking account. So in this scenario, with the numbers that we have illustrated here, a $250,000 salary can quickly come down to $137,000. We've got a little bit of savings hidden in there with the 401k contribution, but for the most part, those other expenses are things that are necessities. They're out of your control. So if 137 is your take-home pay, that's a great starting point for your financial foundation to really understand, okay, what is the actual dollar amount that I have to work with? What do I have to spend? What do I have to save? And what do I have to splurge on? So step one, get a clear understanding of your pay breakdown. Nowadays, no one usually gets pay stub checks, right? It goes right into your checking account. You probably don't actually look at these line items, but maybe this weekend you sit down and you take a look at your paycheck to fully grasp what all those deductions are that are coming out. So you go through the exercise, you find out actually how much you're getting paid, and then you say, okay, I've got 137, I got 150,000 left. Where should that go? Right? So a lot of questions are, there are a ton of budgeting apps out there. On the Wandcast, I shared some budgeting tool apps such as Quick and Simplify to keep track of your spending. And those were all great, right? But to use one of those softwares, you have to actually build in within the software what your budget line items are. So how much do you want to spend in each of these categories? It's one thing to know how much you're spending. It's a second to have a goal to keep it around a certain metric. So again, these are just for illustrative purposes. Everyone's different. Everyone's at a different stage in life. But say you're making 137 after all those deduction comes out. Of that money, you're going to want to try to save anywhere between 25 and 35% of that. And then you're going to spend 65 to 75%. We'll start on the spending side first. So housing, that's usually almost everyone's largest expense, whether it's mortgage, HOA fees, or rent. That's a big line item that comes off first. Maybe you have student loan debt or car payments, all those debts that you have to pay off. That's considered in the spend category. Lifestyle and travel, you all probably work very hard in your career, so you all have to splurge so you don't get burnt out, right? So you want to make sure you're spending money on that. And then maybe you have some professional expenses too as you try to advance your career as well. So if we focus on that spend category, again, you take that number, that after-tax number that's coming in your pocket, spend 65 to 75% of that. That's really what you should target spending. If you're at an advanced stage in your career, maybe you no longer have any debts, that's extra money that you can save a little, spend a little more, right? So you can reproportion that money once you no longer have debts. Going to the save and invest standpoint, again, everyone's different. These are just good rules of thumbs. But If you are consistently saving 25 to 35% of your salary over the long run, this will allow you to build up a bucket of money that in the long run can be there to support your lifestyle when you retire. It can support, maybe generational wealth. It can support charitable endeavors later on. It just offers you a lot more flexibility earlier on in your career, maybe if you're top heavy with some of the expenses, that percent may be lower. But again, this is just something to target as you progress in your career. So the first is that 10 to 15% should go into a retirement account. On the other slide, you saw that we had the 401k coming out. So that's automatically going to come out of your pay. So it's like forced savings in the beginning. This is something that, again, is very personal based on specific situations. So you should look at your own family situation to determine this. But you can either put into a retirement account pre-tax, so you're getting a tax deduction, or Roth, which is tax-free. Those are two pretty nitty-gritty details that, happy to dive into. It might bore some people, but the Roth grows tax-free, and then the 401k, which is a traditional IRA, when you take the money out, you're going to have to pay tax on it. So the reason you'll see here is that we don't have all your money going towards retirement is that you can't access it till you're 59 and a half. So when you think about saving and investing, it's great if you can max out your 401k, but we don't necessarily want you doing that if you can't save in other areas. So you'll see here, you want 5 to 10% in emergency and short-term savings. The good rule of thumb on the bottom says you want 6 months in cash reserves. You could lose a job. You could want the flexibility to change jobs. You could have something go wrong with the house. You want to have around 6 months of living expenses in a high yield savings account, money markets. There's tons of options available online now for those things. And then the third bucket there is 5 to 10% in long-term investing. So this is accounts that you can do investing in, whether it's stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, you name it, wide variety, but it's not earmarked for retirement. And that's what's key. You don't want to get pigeonholed to where all your savings bucket is in retirement because you can't access it before 59 and a half. So you really want to make sure that you have some liquidity on that savings end. So again, when we think about small steps that you can be taking to gain control of your finances and understand your financial picture, first, really gain a clear understanding of the money that you're bringing home. And then based off of that number, go through an exercise like this. How much am I spending? How much am I saving? So the next thing we're going to talk about is the power of building wealth. So we're going through a lot of information today. So if you have questions, we'll get to them at the end too, and happy to dive into anything further, throwing a lot at you. But so we just talked through, how you're bringing home the money, what you're spending, what you're saving. But now let's talk about the power of building wealth. So how do you do this, right? So you hopefully want to retire. Maybe you want to start a family, which includes college long term, or you want to purchase a home. How do you go about building wealth in the long run? So, kind of focusing on that save section of that last slide that we were just on, there's a difference between saving and investing. So, we'll talk through different buckets. We always like to call it a bucket strategy. So the first bucket that you see here is short-term savings. Again, keeping around 6 months in reserves, liquid, money markets, high yield savings accounts, anything like that. It's accessible, it's there. That money won't grow, right? Substantially. It's, whatever the yield of money market rates are, but it's also not going to lose money. There's volatility when you invest money, whether it's in retirement accounts or non-retirement accounts. There is risk to it, right? With higher return comes higher risk. So that short-term savings, I wouldn't be thinking that you're gonna, win big on that in terms of return. It's more there for security and accessibility. Then your long-term investments, these are things like those 401ks, Roth IRAs, those investment accounts that you're investing but aren't necessarily for retirement accounts. They're typically called brokerage accounts. This pool of money is really where you can build long-term wealth. There's kind of small buckets inside of there where you've got your retirement accounts that you can access in the long run, but then you have that midterm bucket of brokerage investments that you can leave there and let accumulate for the long run, or you can invest it with a purpose. You can invest it for a retirement home. You can invest it for your kids' college. You can invest it because in a couple years you want to take a big trip, right? So there's a lot of flexibility there, but the biggest thing is that this bucket, hopefully over the long run, has more growth potential. It does have more risk. So that's why you want both. We don't want all your eggs in one basket. And then a third form of wealth accumulation is real estate, whether it's rental properties, your primary home, vacation homes. These are hard assets. You couldn't sell them tomorrow, right? Maybe in some situations with the market, you could flip them pretty quickly, but real estate is obviously a wonderful asset to have. And with each of these different buckets, again, they each serve different purposes. So you don't want to have all your money in one. You want to make sure that you're spreading it out based off of what your goals are. So the next, this is just going to dive, and most of you may know about this, but we'll dive just a little bit into the actual investment vehicles. So one of the most common questions we often get asked too from folks that are maybe just started, investing or they're working on building their long-term wealth is, can I do the same investments in a retirement plan versus a non-retirement plan? Yes. So non-retirement investment accounts are invested. You can have the same stock in a retirement account as you can a non-retirement account. I always like to say that the main difference is the taxes, right? So retirement accounts, they're there for the long run. You can't access them typically before age 59 and a half. Non-retirement accounts can be invested and they have the same growth potential, but there's more flexibility. You can pull them out. There's no age restriction on when you can pull them out. There's no penalty for pulling them out early. So that's why it's important to have both buckets. Another misconception with retirement accounts is you'll see their pre-tax versus Roth contributions. Historically, Roth IRAs were only available to you if you made, it's adjusted for inflation, but if you made below a certain income threshold. Nowadays, 401ks allow for Roth contributions to be made inside a 401k with no income cap. This is a very important new rule change that has gone on because everybody likes a good Roth contribution. Why? Because if you put $1 in today into a Roth account, 20 years from now, you go to take the money out and say it's $100. That $1 turned into 100. All $100 is completely tax-free. So you only paid tax on $1. Now you're getting 100 tax-free. There's really no other account like it, right? Because for pre-tax, if you put $1 in, you got a tax deduction then. But if you then grew to 100, you're paying income tax on all $100. So that's the major difference between pre-tax and Roth. Pre-tax, you get the deduction on the front end. Roth, you do not. But pre-tax, you're paying it on the way out. So one thing again is that as you look at your overall financial picture is if you have all your money in pre-tax dollars, when you get out to retirement, really that portfolio is not the value you think it is because you have to pay tax on all of that unless you donate it to charity, but that's a whole nother whole nother subject. So really building up that Roth bucket, if you can, inside a 401k is an awesome diversifier to a portfolio and really can pay dividends for you in the future. Also, inside retirement accounts, it's very typical that people change jobs. They never roll over old 401ks. You're better off usually consolidating them in one place so that you have one investment strategy, one diversified pool to keep track of. Also, inside 401ks, it's very common to have, target date funds, meaning that the investment account automatically adjusts as you get older. Those are okay for some people, but we always stress that you probably want to build out a customized portfolio rather than sticking with a target date fund. So, common mistakes. So these are common mistakes, that we see happen. I've been in the industry now for over 10 years, and these things come up way too often. And I think just with a little bit of education goes a long way. So one of the most important things we see is that people put too much money in those pre-tax accounts. Again, everybody wants a tax deduction, right? It's tax time, so don't mean to get you all stressed out, but if you put all your money in pre-tax accounts, again, we see that when you get out into the future, you're not thinking about it when you do it, But when you get out to the future, all that money's taxable, right? So if you can effectively build out that bucket strategy over the course of your career, it can really work for your benefit in the long run. Not a planning for long-term expenses. That's key, right? You don't want to have the mysterious, problem at home and not have the liquid cash available for that. That's where you want that short-term savings. Never revisiting asset allocation. You don't want to, get into your late 80s and have the same asset allocation as you did in your 40s or 20s. So you want to make sure you're constantly reviewing your investment accounts at least annually. Beneficiary designations, if you ever go through a divorce or you have children and grandchildren, you want to make sure you're taking a review on the beneficiary designations on your accounts as well as your estate documents to make sure it's all in working order and the way you want it. Again, that other one I mentioned, we once had somebody have 12 old 401ks from a previous employer. That is 12 portfolios, 12 beneficiary designations, 12 address changes. So it's best to consolidate them all into one place for easy management. And then when you think about building out your long-term plan, much more easy for you to handle as well. And then putting future dollar values on goals. You can say you want to buy that home in 10 years from now, but what's the actual dollar value that you're working towards? And then again, thinking your retirement plan through work can cover all your expenses. 401ks are great, but oftentimes you need another bucket of money to support your goals in the long run. So it's really being honest with yourself with what your goals are in the future, and we'll talk about that. But really taking pulse of where you're at to make sure that you're on track. So I know we got the chat function going on here too, and we'll answer some questions at the end. But just curious if anyone has the biggest blind spot on here or what resonates most with you. Hopefully you guys are taking a few notes of things that maybe you want to check this weekend when you have some time. So now we've gone through, how to take a pulse of what your current financial picture looks like, what you're bringing in, what's going out, and then how much to save. And then we just talked through some ways to most effectively put that money to work for you. Now let's get to the bigger picture of what do all these accounts mean? What does my income even mean in the long run? And that's where the financial planning piece really comes in. And I'll give you some small tidbits at the end of how you can build out a plan on your own. But as a woman, planning is more essential than ever. And there are a few key traits in here. You've probably all heard or you could read about it about the great wealth transfer. Women often control most of the household budget. Women are set to inherit more money than their male counterparts in the long run. And this is a pivotal point for women because you want to make sure that you're planning for this effectively, early, and often, rather than waiting for something like that to happen. One of the biggest risks that women have is that we typically live longer. Well, if you're going to live longer, you're going to need to make sure your assets are there longer. Not only that, but women often find themselves to typically be in a sandwich position. And what that means, it's a fun little phrase that means you may be in the busiest working years of your life, but you're also caring for aging parents. Maybe you're also caring for adult children who are still on the payroll, as I like to say. So, you have to have more money because you're going to live longer, but you also might be working against yourself because you're helping support two other generations at the same time. So it's not a problem, but proactively planning ahead for that is key. Women also typically have career paths that are nonlinear. Maybe you want to have a full career change in your 50s, or maybe you took time off to raise your children early on, or you're planning to do that. Again, not a problem, but you want to make sure that you're proactively planning for those times. Again, the wealth transfer, more money is flowing to females than ever before. And it's really important to make sure that you're evaluating that wealth transfer to make sure you're using it effectively, make sure you're using it towards really what your intentions are, whether it's transferring to your children, transferring it to charitable organizations that mean something to you. You just want to make sure that you're really planning for that in the long run. So proactive planning is key for anyone, but women have some unique differences to them that you really want to make sure you're harnessing and using it to your advantage. I'm sure each of you can probably find one of these reasons that resonates most with you. So the happiness effect, one of my favorite sayings, I say this to my team all the time too, about the work that we do, is that money can't buy happiness, right? So you go back to some of the first things I talked about building your financial foundation, saving money, investing. So you have $1 million in your 401k. Are you really happier because you have $1 million in your 401k? Probably not, right? Money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy flexibility. It buys financial security that if you want to change jobs, if you want to help out, a family member or friend financially, if you want to give charitably to something, to a cause that means something for you, you have the flexibility to do so, right? If you don't save all along, you get to a point where maybe you just have enough to retire, or you want to make that career change because you're not happy, but you're scared financially that you're not sure if you'll be able to do it. So I always like to say that when you're thinking about saving money, it's not to hit a specific dollar amount, right? It's to plan for the things that matter most to you and to offer you flexibility in the long run. So um, I always think this is funny, right? Material goods, especially kids these days, they don't really want the material goods, they want the experiences, but because you're happier, right? It's the diminishing law of returns when we look here. So crafting your plan. So again, this is a little bit of a tiptoe into, how you can really take the materials that you have at your disposal, the information going through your financial picture to really craft out a financial plan for yourself in the long run. So if you listen to the Wandcast, you may have heard that I'm a marathon runner. So I never train for a marathon or enter into a marathon without a strict training plan. I have my runs, I have a coach, I've got, the meals that I eat. So it's a holistic training plan, right? And I think about financial planning and our clients think about it in a similar manner. You don't just one day go out there and decide that you're going to run a marathon, and you don't one day just decide that, hey, today's the day, my whole plan's going to be done within a day. No, financial planning is really a process that takes quite a lot of time, right? We're going to go through some things that you really need to think deeply on that are outside of just numbers, but crafting your plan is more of an art. It's a holistic one, and it's one that takes a lot of time. So I'll leave this up for a little bit. What are your goals? Right? So again, we've walked through how to take stock of what your financial picture looks like, how to implement some wealth building tools in there, but for what? Right? Going back to that happiness curve, what are you saving money for? And what I'm saving money for, or Ashley or Wendy, are completely different things, right? So truly, what are your goals? We work with families, and sometimes we have a family meeting and we have these little decks of cards. On the cards, there's no words, there's images. And each of those images represents different things. It can be mountains, it could be a beach, it could be a college degree. And we have our clients rank them of what's most important to them. Never do they come out the same for every family member, but it's a really thoughtful process to think about what matters most to you. What are your goals? Because as you go down this path to really start thinking about what are you saving, right? Because my recommendations of how you save your money are drastically different based off what your goals are. So you never want to start investing if you really don't truly know what your goals are. So having a plan like this is key, right? Again, some of these are just key ones, but legacy planning, travel is a big one, retirement planning, education planning, purchasing large things, boats, homes, cars, charitable giving. All of these things can be deeply important to individuals. So you really want to think about what matters most to you as you start going down this path. So we just went through all the positives, right? What your goals are. But this is a big question. What keeps you up at night? So we're going to plan for the good stuff, right? But what are topics that keep you up at night? Again, think about this. Jot some ideas down. Some of the key ones are, do I have enough? And that enough, again, is not a blanket number. It's different for different individuals based off of what their goals are. Am I prepared for the what ifs? This is a common one. Am I prepared for a long-term care event where I need to go into memory care? Am I prepared that if I do lose my job, right? Knowing and having some security around those what ifs can be pretty impactful for individuals. Again, money can't buy happiness, but it can buy flexibility and peace of mind in the long run. So just interested, you all can put it in the chat too, what topics keep you up at night. I like planning better for the goals, but we also have to plan for the what ifs. So this is a little bit of an overview. 4 steps, right? We kind of talked about these in the beginning. Crafting your financial plan. So, you're either, you could be at the beginning of the career, you could be in the middle of your career, you could be at the end of your career. It doesn't matter. Everybody needs a plan. Everyone's goals are different, right? Everyone's end goals are different, but everyone still needs a plan. So the first part of crafting your plan is, again, getting that baseline. Take a review of your employee benefits packet. Take a review of your take-home pay. Take a stock of what your assets are. What are your liabilities? You're building yourself a personal financial balance sheet. If Quick app is, again, I think I mentioned it earlier, it's quick and simplified, $2.99 a month. I could tell you where every 10 cents that I make goes because you can track all your expenses. The fun part's when you got to build out your budget in there, but you want to get a baseline of your financial picture. The second step is setting your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What are those goals? Because that is going to help draw what your action items are in the long run. Again, one thing to know what your assets and liabilities are. It's one thing to invest, but you want to be investing towards your goals. So setting time to set aside what your goals are. The third is setting action items into play. Another team member of mine uses the example that you have knee surgery and you go to the physical therapist. Physical therapist tells you you have to do these exercises twice a week. How many people actually do them? Very few, right? So setting your action items into play is one thing, but then you've got to have the actual continual follow-up and accountability. I can't tell you how many times we send people to an estate planner, they get their estate documents done, they get a revocable trust. Half the time, the revocable trust never gets funded or put as a beneficiary on any of the accounts because there's no accountability. The estate attorney sends them on their way, and the advisor never updates the beneficiaries, right? So it's the accountability to actually follow through with the action items because you could have all these grand plans, right? All these goals, but the sooner and more often that you're accountable and you set the action items and you follow up with them, the better chance that you will have to be reaching your goal. And again, this philosophy, doesn't just apply to financial planning, it applies to anything, going back to my marathon running, right? So if I didn't train, if I didn't eat properly, there's no way I could make it to the marathon finish line. So it's the same thing with the financial plan. If you truly want to retire by 55, or you do want to set up college accounts or a donor advised fund so that you have charitable legacy, you got to actually do the small steps to get there. Most people don't like to talk about money. It's not something that most people talk about when they go out with their friends, but it should be something that's top of mind for you, even if you're just doing it at home alone. So this is kind of a little bit of an outline of just a visual outline of how you can actually start to think about these items, put dollar values to them, like we talked about. So this is a screenshot from just a sample case of breaking out your expenses into your needs, your wants, and your wishes. Again, going back, you've got to make sure you know what your goals are as you start going through a financial planning process to know what you're looking at. And again, your goals change, right? A financial plan is flexible, just like your life. So you want to have it constantly be evaluating with you. So your needs, here we have basic living expenses. Think of mortgages. Think of, if you've already paid off your mortgage, this is food on the table, utilities, phone bills, the basic things that keep you running. Then you have healthcare. So we know that if you're on Medicare after age 65 or health insurance before then, we've got that denoted. They want a new car every 3 years. Mike also wanted a new truck in here too. We've got fun money, so that's discretionary money, whether it's going out to eat, going to the movies, whatever you like to do. This couple wanted an annual family vacation, and then they also wanted to take smaller vacations, just the two of them, and then sending their daughter Kim to college. So we're breaking it out into these needs, wants, and wishes. The objective is that you have enough money to fund all of them, but I always tell folks that you want to put your wildest dreams here. And then you work a plan backwards to see if you're able to actually reach all of those goals. You may not, right? You could run through the analysis and maybe some of those smaller vacations have to come off, but that's why you rank where these goals fit most to you. Again, going back to those cards that we have with the images we use with families, there is a ranking, right? Some folks will have retirement above travel or vice versa. Everyone's unique, and that's why it's really important to have a thoughtful process that evolves with you and is unique to you about what your financial goals are. And this all works backwards, right? Because if your only goal is retirement, then sure, put all your money in your retirement accounts. But if you have goals that are outside of retirement that you need money before then, you can't have all your money in retirement accounts. You've got to have it in other investment accounts as well. So the evolution of a financial plan, again, nothing happens overnight. Financial plan is changing, it's an adapting roadmap for you to reach your goals, but it's constantly evolving with you. Again, you could, if you go back to that other page, the family trips of $18,000 a year were really important. Well, maybe they do that till they're 80 and then their goals shift, right? Different priorities come top of mind. And that's why you want an interactive plan that's able to evolve with you as your needs change, as your desires change. But you got to start from somewhere and then have it evolve with you. It's the same thing with estate planning. You got to have your basic documents and then it can evolve with complexities as you progress. So this is the outcome. So you go through all this, and you're like, well, why would I sit down and spend my time going through a financial plan, right? Hopefully it's so that you have a clear understanding of your financial foundation. And heck, even if you stop there, right? At least you know how much you're getting paid. Second is so that you have a roadmap of where you're going. Most people don't like uncertainty, right? It's human nature. So having this roadmap kind of allows you to see, even if it's, a little bit blurry, where you're going in the future. The third is so that you have some action steps. Even if you check one off a week, right? It's good to check something off. And the fourth and most important is that hopefully, if you take time to really understand your current financial situation and where you're going, hopefully you'll have financial freedom and empowerment that comes with that. Numbers shouldn't be a scary thing. This should be something that you feel good about. It's your money, so you should understand it. So, some key takeaways today is that number one, and you can all do this at home this weekend, have a clear understanding of your personal balance sheet. You can't do any of the other steps until you understand that. Second, take advantage of saving opportunities early, right? Pay yourself first, right? Do you really need that extra Starbucks or could you sock away an extra $5? Diversify your buckets of assets. You don't want all your eggs in one basket, whether it's savings accounts, investment accounts, or real estate. Make sure you're diversified. Financial plans are unique to you. You can go online and there are a lot of these things that tell you, or if you chat GBT it, I think it says you need like $1.2 million to retire. I don't know how it figures that out, but everyone's expenses are different. So you want to make sure that your plan is unique to you. And then financial decisions are not made in isolation, right? It's hard to just look at your retirement account without looking at everything else. So you want to make sure that it's integrated well. Fourth or last and most importantly is that proactive planning is key, right? Proactive planning can really provide you happiness in the long run, flexibility, and long-term wealth. So starting early can really help you in the long run. So if you've enjoyed today and you have additional questions, I'll actually be at the WAN Summit on Monday, May 4th. We'll be doing 20-minute free slots if you want to stop by and ask any questions. And then doing the WAN cast as well with some episodes. One just came out in February. And thank you all for having me.
Hi, so that was fantastic, Emily. Thanks so much. I have been looking at the chat. We have some really good questions that I want to get in before we wrap up. Really some technical questions. Um, Before we do, I just want to, why am I talking? Quickly introduce myself. Why isn't it Ashley talking? My name's Wendy Thomas Robbins. I worked in affordable housing as an attorney, mostly at Boston Financial, Holland and Knight, for over 26 years. I'm currently a well-being strategist and coach. I spoke at the One Summit a few summers ago. It was amazing down in Atlanta. I love this space. I love what you're doing, Ashley. And Emily and I have come to work together and collaborate because as I look at all of the dimensions of well-being, especially for professional women, one of the biggest sources of anxiety is our finances, is the lack of financial freedom, the lack of understanding, and in such a male-dominated space like the financial world, I think it's just so refreshing to have a woman that I can talk to without feeling ashamed of my lack of knowledge and lack of planning as a young professional. And some of these questions I still have that I found in the chat. I'm like, God, I don't even know the answers to these. Like, so I'm looking forward to the answers. You can keep adding questions if you want, but I'm just gonna read some of these so we can dive in a little bit deeper. So the first one is, does long-term investing also include CDs? That's from Jess.
I mean, I think it does. CD rates, this is kind of timely. CD rates the past couple of years have been historically high. Long-term CDs aren't going to get you most bang for your buck, right? They were great the last couple of years, but especially if you're early on in your career, I wouldn't recommend keeping everything in CDs. CDs are much more of that like short-term liquid savings. What goes in is going to come out with a little bit of interest, but not like it would in the market.
Great. Uh, a common question that Ashley put in that I always had too is that when you have a significant amount of debt and you have some extra income, where should you be putting that in terms of savings versus paying down that debt? And how do you sort of look at the different, I know it's what is your interest rate? What does the market look like? Those
Yeah,
are factors too.
it's definitely type of debt and interest rate, right? So I'm more conservative in nature rather than aggressive. So I'd rather have the debt paid off. But if we're talking mortgage rates, like a mortgage is a good debt, right? Or it's an interest-free credit card, that's fine. Credit cards, usually 25% or more. You're never going to make that in the market consistently, right? So I would pay off those. Car loans, it usually depends, right? So if it's 0 to 3%, I'd keep the loan. If it's more than that, I'd pay it off. When we look at student loan debt, it's the same thing. Can you consolidate it to a lower interest rate? It would depend on how much you can save, but any of those rates that are, 7, 8%, I try to pay those off as quickly as possible.
In terms of short-term savings, though, so that if you hit a crisis situation, you still want to be building up, right? That short-term, like six
Certainly.
months that you were talking about. So kind of
You definitely
balancing that.
want, yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. You don't want to, end up in a situation where you're eating Cheerios because you paid off the car loan, right? So you want to make sure that you do have a little bit of money set aside.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of buzz lately, Ellie pointed out, about high yield savings accounts. She's starting to save, she's just starting her journey, and she was asking if you could share what differentiates the stronger options in this space.
Yeah. Again, we're kind of really in a unique time. This is very investment specific in the market. Interest rates used to be, you could get a money market for 5%. All those online platforms, they're all operating on the same thing, right? It's depending on where interest rates go. So as interest rates have come down, those rates aren't 5% anymore, right? They're 3, maybe 4%. So I would make sure that maybe it's something connected to one of the banks that you use or Ally Bank online is really easy to use. But again, those money market rates, you're going to start to see them continually come down. 5 years ago, the same money market fund that we use at our firm was paying 1%. Now it's paying 3.5. 2 years ago, it's paying 5. So money markets aren't consistent over the long run. It all depends on interest rates.
Great, thank you. Jess talked about that 401k, like adding a percentage into a Roth 401k. She says, I also have a Roth IRA, so I thought I was covered with maxing that out, but now she's thinking again.
Yes, I've seen a couple questions on that. This is my one of my favorite topics because it was a rule change that's really for everyone's benefit, but your employer is not going to necessarily tell you about it. So the quick synopsis of it is that if you are below the income threshold, you probably have a Roth at one of whatever institution you use for your investments. Great. If you're under the age of 50, you can put 7,000 or next year you can put 7,500 in. That's it. You can't put $1 or more over that. And again, if you're over the income threshold, you can't put any money into it. A 401k through your work, you can put up to $23,500 into a Roth. And that's if you're under 50. If you're over 50, you get to do an additional catch up. So big dollar difference of what you can put into the Roth. You could essentially put in 3 times more into the Roth option at the 401k through your employer. You can do both too, right? It doesn't preclude you. The Roth that you have at an investment firm outside of your employer is driven by income. So again, if you're under the income limit, you can put into it regardless if you have a 401k. If you're over the income limit, that's where you can't. So
And
a lot more Roth savings.
just when you're taking that money out, when you take it out of a 401k, you're going to get hit with the taxes at the tax rate that you are at that time,
Right.
right? Any Roth inside of a 401k or outside of the 401k in like an IRA, those you take out that money tax free. Is that
You
right?
don't pay dollar on tax of the growth, the principal, because you've already paid tax on the principal, but it's really the growth piece. It's a huge benefit that they now allow them into 401ks.
Okay. Lee asks, do you recommend revisiting allocations to move towards a target date fund at some point? I'm an early-ish in my career, so my allocations are aggressive currently.
I would not move towards a target date fund. I would adjust your investments down to a more conservative portfolio as you get closer to retirement age and you progress in your career. Target date funds, I mean, typically, like when we advise folks, if you have over $50,000 in a 401k, you should diversify out of a target date fund. Target date funds are great when you're first starting off and you've got, a couple $1,000s in there, but as you start to build the portfolio, it's really more to your advantage to build out a customized portfolio.
Okay, great. Um, Anything else?
There's one, Wendy. I know it jumps around. That's why there's one that says, can you have a Roth inside your 401k and a separate one, i.e., Fidelity Charles Schwab? What exactly does it mean to have a Roth inside your 401k? What is the benefit compared to having one with a financial institution of your choosing?
So that's where you can have both, and the difference is that dollar amount. So inside the 401k, like if you go on, it will say, do you want to put money in pre-tax or Roth? So you would, if you wanted to change it, you would zero out the pre-tax and put it in Roth. The benefit to doing it inside your employer plan is again that dollar amount. You're maxed out at 7,500 in Fidelity or whatever institution, but inside the 401k, the limits are much larger. And the 403b is the exact same thing as a 401k. Great question. 403bs are just for nonprofits. Same
Okay.
benefit.
I love this question too, because this is sort of what I did like later in my career when I became like an entrepreneur. I was like, okay, I have to look at my finances like I'm the CEO. Like this is another business of mine. I have to look at it with that business mindset. And what do I need? I need all of these different players. And this question from Rachel is, how do I create a truly holistic financial plan with an advisor, an accountant, an attorney, like all in their own silos where one is not talking to the other? And you do that so well, and I had to really figure that out on my own too, which I think is so helpful. If you can speak to that.
Yeah, certainly. Great question. And I think that's the difference between someone being an investment advisor and a holistic financial planner. Like your financial planner should be coordinating your estate documents to your CPA. They should be requesting your tax return every year. They should be sitting in your estate planning meetings. you want them to serve as that financial quarterback or that CFO, as I like to say, for you and your finances so that, there's one-stop shopping. Hey, you have a question, maybe they don't do it, but they can find the resource that does. And their second set of ears on the estate planning calls or making sure that the CPA doesn't have questions on your tax documents. So I think it's building a good team around you. I'll go back to the marathon, right? My running coach talks to my physical therapist who talks to the nutritionist, right? They all talk because it's all about me, right? It's all about you when it's your financial plan. You want to make sure that it's really well coordinated in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it becomes too much work. It's like we
Oh,
all
then
have
you never
lives
do it.
outside of this, and then we never do it. Exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
why do we have blind
I'll tell
spots?
you, those are the horror stories where I see women that are divorced sometimes and they come in. I'm like, the beneficiary on your 401k relates to an estate document that never got updated, where your ex-husband is now going to get all this money, right? Like you want to make sure that it's all cleaned up. Yeah, it's good just to have somebody to coordinate everything.
Yeah.
So there's a question about developers that need large liquid assets. That's a great question. A few folks that I work with like need financial statements all the time for lenders or investors because they want to make sure they're liquid and they're not, they're very sustainable. Those are where you're probably going to want to do more secure investments. Investing is volatile, right? You never know. That's where you're probably going to want to park more proportion into money markets or corporate bonds or something, building out a strategy that maybe is paying you a higher interest rate. You're okay not getting the large returns of investing, but it's for a purpose, right? And then timing it too. That gets into the nitty gritty, but timing the bonds or whatever you may be in to float with when you may need the money or when those calls are.
The last one I see is, can a 401k balance be rolled into a 403b?
Yes, with a little asterisk marks. It's up to each independent 401k company if they allow for rollovers. If they don't, you can just open up an IRA and transfer it into that.
Emily, clearly
Yes.
you did a great presentation because the chat is on fire.
Questions are great. These are
So
the fun things. Yeah.
congratulations for the second time today. Once on your award and second on an amazing presentation. Y'all, thank you so much I mean, we were just in a master's class and y'all were very good students. We're watching this chat. Make sure if you're at Summit, you check out Emily, give her a call. I saw her information on the back page. And I will tell you, most of your teams that the person asked about are not talking to each other. So if you find someone like Emily that will coordinate all of that for you, it's amazing. So sign up for a time slot with her at Summit and check out Wandcast and more to come from Emily and Wendy. Thank you so much for an awesome introduction to Emily for us.
Absolutely. It's always good to
Yeah,
be
thank you
here.
all.
You guys have a great afternoon. Thanks, Emily.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, you too. Bye.